Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we are going to be doing kind of a adaptation of the weekly best decks for historic best of one. So this is going to be a little bit less on the quantifiable best decks and kind of more featuring what are some popular new builds or things that have been popping up in the last week or so. There was both the Arena Championship that was historic, that's lent to some adaptations into decks, as well as the release of Shadows over Innistrad. And while we don't have a heavy data set yet to actually quantify a whole bunch of decks, we do have some new decks that people are trying out. So I want to kind of feature some decks that folks are trying with some of the new cards from Shadows over Innistrad, or that have kind of stemmed from the recent Arena Championship. Once we have enough data, we'll try to quantify it. So I will preface and say the decks that we don't have stats, discretion is there. If it interests you, you want to spend the wild cards, you have the cards, go ahead, but I can't for sure say, you know, this deck's great, other than the first deck we'll cover, which is the Selesnya Hammer deck, which has some stats associated with it. Once we get the data, we'll go through and we'll highlight all that. Same if you're new to this stuff, we do this every week. We look at stats from Untapped GG, which you see on the screen. A companion tool that runs alongside Arena, tracks win rates, a whole bunch of good data sources. You can track your own games. The link is in the description if you want to get started with that. It's free to use a whole bunch of it. But we're going to kind of go from here. If you're looking for Explorer content, standard content, we do that. It's in the playlist. I also had pre-done a whole bunch of stuff for the Explore metagame challenge this weekend, but the Arena bug got it postponed a couple weeks. So if you need deck lists, there's a good resource there, and I'll go through and I'll update it with some more decks once we get stats as well. So we are looking May 21st from the release of the new set to the 24th, Platinum to Mythic, 17,000 games. And the top performing deck, so it's both the top performing and it's a new deck, so it hits two boxes, 68% win rate. It is Hammer Time in Historic. So Hammer Time, for those of you who are unfamiliar, well, you take a Colossal Hammer, a 1-mana target creature gets plus 10/10 and loses flying. The downside with this is it costs 8 to equip. Well, not really. The way we're going to kind of offset this is by Kemba's Outfitter that enters the battlefield and basically changes the equip cost to 1 instead. You either have that or the newly printed Sigarda's Aid. Newly old card, so it was in Shadows over Innistrad. New to Arena, old card. This is a modern deck that's towards the top. Hammer Time, as it's named after the hammer. And Sigarda's Aid lets you cast instants and sorceries as though they had flash, and then whenever an equipment enters the battlefield, you can attach to target creature, so bypassing that. So it could also be used as a kind of combat trick. So the core of the deck, and I believe this original deck list came from Delmo, Italian streamer, so credit to him if so. So you have your hammers, and we also have Belt of Giant Growth from the Baldur's Gate set. So this was a Alchemy and Historic set that was based off the paper summer set, Adventures into Baldur's Gate, or whatever it is, the Dungeons & Dragons set. So it's a paper card that came over, and it's basically another copy of Colossal Hammer. Target creature gets, the equipped creature gets plus 10/10, or has base power and toughness. So you can actually stack them to have it be 20 power. And then its equip cost is 10, but it gets a reduction based on the creature's power. So the rest of the deck, if we look at it, you have Ornithopters, which you can throw hammers onto. You have a Kemba copy, that is another way to kind of offset the equipped cost. Ingenious Smith helps you dig for your copies of hammer. Gingerbread is pseudo unblockable. Portable Hole is removal. Savior as protection. Some Shadow Spheres for trample lifelink. And then some Skrells for protection, and a single Springleaf Trump for some ramp. In your mana base, you also have access to Blink Moth Nexus, another evasive creature that you can throw some hammers onto. So kind of a cool deck here. If you like the modern deck, if you want to get it started, cool little shell here to try out. Something I'm going to have to look into trying myself, but I am short, like the cool thing on the top, you see I'm short 4 Sigarda's Aid so far and 3 belts along with 3 Kembas, so couple crafts needed in order to run this deck. The next deck is basically from the Arena Championship, and it's a deck that's been becoming more and more popular on Arena. While we don't have stats, this is something to keep an eye out, and notably it doesn't have necessarily new cards from Shadows over Innistrad. There is another Reanimator deck, so I'm going to kind of show both. This is the one that's kind of more proven. The Arena Championship, I've seen it been played a lot. It's quite formidable. But basically, it is the Reanimator shell, but a little bit more mid-range focus, and then trying to cheat into play Atraxa. Atraxa then fuels your hand, gives you good lifelink body. You can reanimate it with either Unburial Rites or Priest of the Forgotten Fell Rites. And then it's a Crucius shell. Crucius is the best card in the game right now, at least historic. Just does so much, makes every deck better. But this lets you pitch your cards to find your Atraxas. You can then loot it with like blood tokens to kind of get some value there, or Fable the Mirror Breaker. And then the rest of your deck, you got like Hand Disruption, some Fragment Realities, Fatal Pushes removal, and then just the Unburial Rites. You also have a couple copies of Phyrexian Scrapyard. It lets you discard a card, so it's another discard outlet in your mana base. Then it also lets you potentially summon a Soul of New Phyrexia. So it's kind of a way to kind of tutor a creature, gets you extra lands, kind of value in that respect. So there's that version, and then there's this 5-color Reanimator version. Very similar in the nature. So you still have your priests. This version's got a little bit more interaction with Lightning Helix, a bit different spread of discard, also copies of Faithless Looting. This version's still going to Atraxa on the top end, but has a copy of Griselbrand that it is also looking to reanimate. Very similar effects. This is guaranteed. So this gets around card draw, so you don't get hit by Sheoldred. This will get you hit by Sheoldred. So just kind of slightly similar but different. You have the Unburial Rites as your placeholder image, apparently. But your reanimation spell, some Lingering Souls, probably one of my all-time favorite cards. I've cast this spell so many times. Love this card. But ways to just kind of get some blockers, flashback value. And then you have Nahiri the Harbinger. It lets you loot, draw discard, you get to exile target enchantment, tapped artifact, or tapped creature, and then for -8, so after 2 turns of plus in, you get to minus, and then you get to tutor for a creature, put it into play, gets haste, and then returns to your hand, so kind of some value there. So kind of 2 takes on the Reanimator shell. The next deck is arguably one of the hardest decks to play on Arena, and just in general, it's a big brain deck. So this is a deck that has been going around. So it's seen at the Arena Championship, Crocus was playing a version. So this is a Kethis combo deck. So basically, you're playing a Legendary Matters deck, and what you're trying to do is, with Kethis, you get a reduction on the cost of your spells. You are going to cast cards out of your graveyard, and then assemble kind of the combination of Kinnan, and then Kethis lets you recast stuff from your graveyard. Relic of Legends lets you tap your legends. This will give you extra mana, and then basically you want to keep milling yourself with stuff like Grizzly Salvage. The Mox Ambers can generate you extra mana, and then you basically cast Jace a couple times, and then you mill yourself 15, and then you basically generate enough mana that you can just keep casting Jace and then mill out your opponent. That is like my quick explanation of the deck. It is a lot of practice required, especially it's a lot of clicking. I would not suggest this on mobile. But it's a deck that rewards type play. The cool kind of new tech with this is with Kethis, it's any legendary card in your graveyard. So the Bezejus, Otawara, Takanuma all get you extra value in terms of things you can exile from your graveyard. So kind of a combo there. Then go to Izzet Phoenix. So there's the stock Izzet Phoenix with Ledger Shredder. Some folks are trying out Thing in the Ice. I will say I played some Thing in the Ice in Explorer and was very disappointed. I accidentally queued into Historic a couple times. It was a little bit better in Historic because there was less angels. But I was like, Ledger Shredder just seems better. I think the version with Dragon Rage Chandler and Ledger Shredder is better than this. But if you're really compelled to play Thing in the Ice, it's here. This is a shell you can look at. This version's also playing Faithless Salvaging as another looting style effect. You got your lootings in here. I think Phoenix is a better deck in Historic than Explorer with the access to your Faithless Looting, which doesn't exist in Explorer format, but lots of kind of cheap spells, loot, put your Phoenixes into yard, get Phoenix back, baka. Interesting 18 lands in this particular version. We then move to some folks are trying out Snappy Boy, Snapcaster Mage in Historic Wizards, so just kind of throwing a couple copies into the existing Wizards shell. Works kind of nicely with Piece Together to try to get extra casts out of it to get some extra cards. And then it also doubles up on the burn spells. So it's basically just the existing Wizards deck with the addition there. I'm going to show you a couple decks I've been playing that I have liked. So I'm going to start with this Snapcaster deck. So I was 3-1 with it, but I've been playing around. Didn't play a huge amount of matches, but I have liked it. It is Jeskai mid-range, I would say, mid-range control. So you have access to your Snapcaster mages, as well as Cyber Siphoner, so you're playing like a flash tempo style. Divine Purge sweeps up a lot of the early aggressive decks, the artifact decks, stuff like that. But it also resets your Snapcaster mages, so even though you pay the tax, you get some value out of it. So you just get to keep casting and recasting Snapcaster mages. With your flash elements, you have things like Wandering Emperor. There's games where I just cast like the same Lightning Helix multiple times, thanks to like Saiba and then Snapcaster Mage. Archmage Charm is also good just as a way to either counter, draw some cards. Expressive Iteration gets you value from the graveyard, and then just some burn, various kind of removal spells in that. It was playing Fable the Mirror Breaker. Honestly, as I move forward, I'm probably going to cut the Fables and then go up an extra copy of Wandering Emperor, Saiba, probably one more land, and then probably another Fragment Reality. I like that kind of configuration, play more at instant speed with the deck. So there's that version of the Bolt. So I have a gameplay video of all these. I was also trying out some Delirium shells. So I know there's the Jund decks that exist right now with Crucius, with Jarosol. I was purposely trying to play without it because I wanted to see a low to the ground version, how it played out. So this version here is a Lurrus shell where we are playing like Dragon Rage Chandler, Vassal of Nescency to fuel our graveyard. With this particular version, I cast the same copy. Like I escaped Kroxa like four times, I think, in a game. Just because I fueled the grave so much. You have Tarmogoyfs, earliest iterations really good at fueling your hand, Kolikin's Command to get back value. So just a bunch of flexibility here. The Cling to Dust also really nice here. Just a lot of things you can do from your graveyard, and then just a lot of ways to fill it. We were also playing Grim Flayer. So we had Tarmogoyfs and Grim Flayers both as bigger beaters that kind of push through damage. So there's that version, and then I tried out a version as well without Lurrus, but that was playing Tyvars to kind of rebuy your cheap creatures and get some value there. Very similar concepts. I think it's probably better to go with the Lurrus shell. If you are going to be playing like without Lurrus, then you're better playing off of Crucius and Jarosol. I think those shells, like the Vessel of Nascency with Jarosol, seems really good because you fuel your yard a lot, and then it gives you something else to cast proactively with it. So I was playing those. And then I tried out auras with, like it's 0-3. I went into like some weird variants, whereas like turn 3, I got, what was it, 9 lives locked, and then into sweeper, and then just, I don't like auras, to be honest. I played a lot of it early, but I just don't like decks that are so reliant on drawing key cards. It's one of those decks, like, you get Light Pause and Invisible Stalker going, you're just going to roll people. But then the other side, you just have to mull, and you end up with hands with all auras or all creatures, and it just feels kind of bad. But if this is kind of your jam, Invisible Stalker is very good in this deck. I don't have consistency with it, so I'm probably playing it at a detriment. So yeah, those were some of the decks we tried out. Let me know what you think. Also, if you want just like a good deck, for best of 3. I'll just link this one here. This is Missman's Grixis deck, so I've been watching him play this a lot. He's like number 4 mythic with it right now, and it's just like if you like Snapcaster, Grixis, Thoughtseize, this thing is like control player's delight. I've only played one match of best of 3 with it. Took down Teamer Wizards. It is, you grind with this deck. You like get every card you're playing, you're making sure you take advantage. But if you like control, some Nicol Bolas Dragon Gods on the top end for that sweet value. I'll link this one too, just so you have reference to it. So that's it for the week. Like I said, once we get the more quantifiable stats, we'll go with that. But if just giving some ideas for folks to try out decks as we go along. In any case, thanks for watching. Hope you have a great one. Stay safe out there.